Today's text, it centers around these two kinds of wisdom. One is this earthly wisdom, one that we are like fish swimming in the water of earthly wisdom. Sometimes it's so prevalent that we have a hard time recognizing the difference between earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom, or God's wisdom, if you will, if that makes more sense for you. So we're going to be talking about earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom. One comes from God. It produces the fruit, or good fruit, and it leads to a good life. The other is, we'll find out, demonic. It produces bad fruit and leads down a path of destruction. We want the good life, right? James would say, you need to pursue heavenly wisdom if you want the good life. Forsake this earthly wisdom that promises a good life, but actually leads you down a path to destruction. Most of us have actually already experienced this in life, and you can already say, I know that. Most of you will be able to say, I already know that this is true. I've tried to seek happiness on my own terms. I've tried to find happiness in my own way, and I've found it to be wanting. But when I've pursued the Lord and His will and His way, and when I've actually given myself over to Him, I've found that it has led me to life, the good life. So we're going to learn several things today. One is that true wisdom, it's not just about what you know, it's about what we do. You'll see. Those who possess this kind of godly wisdom, heavenly wisdom, their actions demonstrate a humility and a righteousness that leads to peace and the flourishing of their lives and the lives of those who they're in relationship with. So those who possess wisdom, James will label with earthly wisdom, their lives actually create disorder and chaos, division, and he'll even say all kinds of evil. This wisdom, he'll say, is earthly, unspiritual, and he even says it's demonic. Whoa. The second thing that we'll learn is that earthly wisdom, it does possess a form of wisdom, and it lures lots of people into its trap because of that. In other words, you'll find that earthly wisdom does make sense. It makes a sort of sense. And we'll cover how that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense in order to lead you to the abundant life. Okay, so there's an opening question here. What is wisdom? What is knowledge? What's the relationship between the two? And how do you know if you're wise or not? Well, knowledge is about information. It's about facts. It's about possessing a certain amount of information or types of information. Imagine a person who has knowledge about cooking. Anyone? All right, no chefs in here. Okay, we got a few. All right. Knowledge about cooking. You'll get this. So imagine this person watches hours of cooking TV shows. They even like the sitcom kind of cooking shows. They read recipe books. They learn all of the techniques for making, let's say, a perfect steak. I don't know. They learn what temperature you cook it at, how to let the meat rest, to use the right seasonings. They know all the science about searing, marbling, maybe the perfect cut of meat. They're a connoisseur. Well, wisdom is about how to actually apply that knowledge to make the meal. Wisdom is on display when it comes actually time to cook, when it's not just reciting facts, but it's properly heating it, then seasoning the meat just right, and then when it's time to put it all together, and more importantly, they know how to trust their senses, their sight, their sense of smell and touch, rather than just following the recipe. And their experience helps to make those decisions in real time. Possessing wisdom is not that you've memorized a recipe. What matters is the food that you serve on the table. Knowledge is about knowing the recipe. Wisdom is about cooking the meal well. And so James is opening up our morning with this question that's meant to draw us into this conversation. Who is wise and understanding among you? Well, cooking, as you can see, is just one area in which you can see wisdom is at work. We see wisdom at work in all other areas too. You could talk about finance, engineering, you could talk about parenting, teaching. The list, it could be endless. Okay, so there's many types of ways in which you could be wise in this world. And this text is not actually talking about all of those things. It's not talking about the wise economist. It's not talking about the wise weatherman, if there is such a thing. It's not talking about the wise politician. It's just talking about specifically the wisdom for how to live life. Wisdom which speaks to what drives and motivates you, what gives you purpose and fulfillment in your life. This is what James is referring to. In other words, how do we live a good life? In this subject, there is a clear contrast. There's the heavenly wisdom, which would give you a path to the good life. And then there's this earthly wisdom that will give you a completely different path to the good life. And which one's right? So back to James' question, who is wise among you? It won't be those, we know from our illustration about cooking, those who have just ideas or mere words alone. It's not only for those who have smart things to say, in other words. It's over this book we've been warned over and over again that words matter, but what really speaks is our actions. They mean so much more, and they prove our words. And so verse 13 clarifies that the wise are revealed not because they have something to say, or they're saying the right things, but because the fruit of their life, that is, their actions. Take a look in verse 13. It says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that come from wisdom." So those who possess real wisdom, heavenly wisdom, godly wisdom, they'll be known not because they have the right answers, in other words, they possess knowledge, but because the fruit of their life. So what does their life look out like when they live? And the fruit will come a bit more into focus later, in one of the verses we'll deal with that. But it results in the good life and deeds done in humility. How do deeds done in humility reveal this godly and heavenly wisdom? Well, when somebody does a deed in humility, they're a person that's not looking for a kickback for it, like not looking for that praise or that reward, not thinking about what good will happen for them because they do this good deed. They do it with a sense of gratitude because God has blessed them, so they would like to be a blessing to others. And this reveals actually something really powerful when you think about it. A deed done in humility is a deed that's not looking for a reward. That's a deed done from a contented person. A person that's contented in the Lord. That they have received everything they need in Christ, and he will continue to provide all of their needs according to his riches and glory. Therefore, when I do good deeds for another person, I'm not looking for anything from them because what can they give me that I haven't already received? That's a perspective of contentment. That's a perspective of happiness. That is the good life. Proverbs 14:12 speaks this powerful word. It says, "There is a way that appears right, but in the end it leads to death." And I would argue James is picking up on that motif when he talks about the earthly way or the worldly way. You know, it's very counterintuitive these days to talk this way, but imagine, let's say somebody, a preacher, otherwise even a Christian, seems to have a heavenly wisdom. Like they can talk all the talk, they know all the right things to say, but their life is filled with, instead of contentment, humility. Their life is filled with envy and bitterness and selfishness. We would say that even though that person knows quite a bit and may know the Bible backward and forward, they actually possess an earthly wisdom, not a godly one. Because if they possessed a godly one, the fruit of their life would look a lot different. So in other words, you could possess profound knowledge and yet not ever live it out. That's really the hard part. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 2 is such a famous passage. You've all heard it, like every wedding you went to probably from the dawn of time till today. If you have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, in other words, you just the smartest dude or gal in the world, and if you even have faith that can move mountains, wow. But you don't have love, you are nothing. Like, that's wisdom. That's talking about wisdom, that you could have all of that, but you don't have the proper application of that wisdom, then you don't actually have wisdom. You don't. You have great understanding, maybe. And this is the exact point that James is making here next in verse 14. You could possess near perfect knowledge, but in verse 14, if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. In other words, don't be justifying it by the things that you say, and don't deny that you have it. If you have it, you should be honest with yourself and say, okay, I do have a streak of bitterness, or I am a sort of selfish. Don't deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven. That's not godly wisdom, but it's earthly, it's unspiritual, and demonic. It's actually not that much of a stretch to imagine a Christian possessing right knowledge, but then for their life to be filled with kind of an envy, bitter selfishness, selfish ambition. I guess what becomes harder to imagine is how that they would become, like how you would get to the point where you would boast about it, like as if it were a good thing that you were that way. Clearly, Scripture is so plain on that topic. It just speaks about it over and over again, rebuking people who have that sort of an attitude. Yet, you know what's crazy is that is often what we do see. When people feel envious or bitter or have selfish ambition, oftentimes they do justify that behavior to others. They'll tell you why they have a right to feel that way. It can be kind of shocking to hear when you really think about it. Well, I think that part of it goes back to the humility question. What are those Christians fixing their eyes on? If you fix your eyes on the blessings of others, you are likely to become envious and jealous and have selfish ambition and bitter. And instead of fighting against that tendency, it could be easy to continue to seek it and justify it. And that happens, I think it actually needs little imagination. I think each of us can probably, one, see it in ourselves, which of course we should do first, but then we've seen it in others too. Jesus tells a whole parable about this kind of attitude. Part of the parable is emphasized in the prodigal son. You remember the prodigal son, right? The wayward son goes off with his inheritance, but he squanders it. He comes back home groveling, and father welcomes him with open arms, loves on him, gives him a robe and a ring, and gives him a place back in his family. He's throwing a huge family party to celebrate. But what is the other brother doing? The other brother is standing outside the party. He's bitter and contentious and envious because the father has so lavish blessing upon the son. But what has he gotten in his life? And even before the father, he gives his bitter contention, boasting about it, and justifying his reason to be angry. That is sneaky. That is insidious. That can happen to all of us. And so James is warning, you want the good life? Well, your eye can't be evil. Check your eye. So this scenario, I think it tends to play out in big and little ways, and it will rob us from our happiness unless we do something about it or unless we seek the Lord. It can happen when you're You know, when you view your friends on social media is like, I don't know, it could be renamed. Like, I don't know. Somebody give me something crafty, like, envy media or something. You see what everybody else's life is like, and you know it's not even true. It isn't even true. It looks glamorous, maybe online, because people only post the very best of their lives, and usually that's curated too. I mean, even our family, we've had bad and rough moments, and then we said, smile for the camera. And then we smiled, and then only thing that everybody saw was the fact that we had a great time. And really, we struggled. You know what I mean? We struggled. But that could breed envy. That could breed bitterness. When you think about, you see people doing the things that you've never done, the vacations that you've always wanted to take, the milestone, the new house, the new car that you long for but you could never afford, and so on. It's sneaky. It is insidious. This is where humility shines like the gold for the Christian, and it reveals godly wisdom. We should all long for it. We should want it to be realized in our lives, that we would be humble, because it is the path to the good life. Humility, this is kind of a misnomer about humility, is a lot of times people are falsely humble, and we've all done it. Somebody will say, you did a great job with something, whatever it is. And then we go, oh no, I didn't. No, stop, but please say more. No, humility is recognizing a thing for its truth. If somebody says that you did a great job with something, it's actually more humble to say thank you than it is to say no. It wasn't great, actually. It was horrible. I did terrible. That's false humility. What we're talking about in humility is about, you have a true measure of humility is if the measure is if you're as happy for someone else as you would be if it happened to you. Do you see how that sparks from contentment? You're not worried about whether or not they have something more than you or less than you or anything like that. You are as happy for them as you would be as if it happened to you. That's humility. And when you have that, I'm sorry you live the good life, because there's nothing in this life that can steal that from you. Nothing. So, humility sees life as a gift. When God's grace blesses another, humility causes us to celebrate that other person as if it happened to us. And we experience joy in that. How cool. We won't get bitter. We will feel joy for other people. If we don't demonstrate this godly wisdom by our good life and humility, we might, in fact, actually be more so living in the water of our society, living out the wisdom of our world. If you don't feel that, we'll talk a little bit more about that here. There's a form of wisdom in much of our self-help literature these days. Is sort of, it's interlaced in it. I read a lot of different stuff, so I read some of it too. But motivational speakers and stuff that you listen to often just possess that type of wisdom and they want to sell it to you. And what it does ultimately is encourages you to seek happiness in ways in which it can't be found. And whatever it means, do it at all costs. One example of this is Grant Cardone. I don't know. Does anybody of you know his name? He's a pretty famous guy. He's like a real estate investor, entrepreneur. Now he's like a TV star. He's a motivational speaker and an author. And he recently was in this show on Discovery called Undercover Millionaire, where he was given $100 and he was given very little resources. And he was tasked in, I think it was 90 days to build a multi-million-dollar company. And of course, he's famous as a real estate investor, actually. But he's like also people's hero in life. Like people look to him for how to find the good life. And so they go to his TEDx concert, or they read everything he writes, or they'll watch all of these shows, listen to him like he's Jesus himself. Some of the things that he says is, achieve success at all costs. So in other words, you should obsess about your goals and you should work relentlessly to achieve them. Doesn't matter what it costs you. He also talks about wealth and power. That is the end goal in life. That is what you are to live for, to live the good life. His books also, and all of his speaking, often boils down to financial domination, building empires, and becoming unstoppable, according to Grant. He says, cut out the losers. And of course, he's advising them to, eliminate anyone who doesn't serve your goal or mission to success. Look, if you want to build a real estate empire, I bet you follow Grant and he's going to help you get there. But let me ask this, do you think that that's going to lead you to the good life? James would say, it's not. Grant is a form of wisdom, for sure. He's wise to help you make millions, maybe even build a real estate empire, or maybe really become something, or achieve whatever goals you have for your life. But that won't bring lasting happiness and contentment. And isn't that what we long for? Jim Carrey, this has been often quoted, so if it's redundant, I apologize. He rightly says this. He says, and of course he's an actor, comedian, he's wealthy, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so that they can see that it's not the answer. Yeah, I can see James, he's cautioning, he's correcting. Is this line of thinking that we're taking more closely aligned to God's wisdom on the good life, or is it mostly aligned with the world's way of the good life? Will it lead us into deeper relationship with God and others, or will it lead us more into envy, selfish ambition, which will cause discord? Take a look. So this isn't already, I hope that it's been filled with application. You feel it, but James wants to lay it out for us. Okay, so he says in verse 15, he says, such wisdom, and talking about that worldly wisdom, does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and evil practice. Who wants disorder in their life? Like, hey, Lord, give me another scoop of disorder, please. I'll take that. And I'll add a little evil practice to my life. That sounds really good. The reality is you can learn from those kind of people, the Grant Cardones or whoever they are, to help you do a skill or learn an ability that you would like. But you should be cautious when they start to speak of the big issues, the meaning and purpose of your life. Like, why are you here and how will you find fulfillment? For that, they have nothing to say, because that is a philosophy that goes way beyond whether or not or how to build a real estate empire. And I think Jesus would caution the same. He would say, what would it be, or what gain would it be if a person gained the whole world, but then they forfeited their soul? So those who possess this heavenly wisdom, they don't just know the right things to say, but their life looks a certain way. And so let's take a look at verse 17. How do they look? How do they look? It says in verse 17, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, then considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. You know, this is like a description of what, like, the world's wimpiest. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. How many people are like, for their being peace-loving, considerate, for being submissive? For being submissive. For being full of mercy and good fruit? Impartial and sincere? This is like a description of the world's wimpiest, but yet, this is a description of those who are living the good life, who are living contentment and joyful lives. I want to conclude our time Verse 18 says, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. Picture this. Your life is like planting a garden, okay? The choices that you make are the seeds for your garden. You make choices, and those seeds are planted, and they are the plants of your garden. If you decide that you're going to plant what James would say are worldly seeds born out of envy or bitterness or selfish ambition, then you will reap a garden of hardship, strife, and division and unhappiness. That's what he would say. On the other hand, if you decide to plant seeds born of heavenly wisdom, good seeds like patience, love, mercy, selfless consideration, godly submission, you are going to reap a harvest of peace, joy, and righteousness, even contentment. You're going to be living the good life. James is echoing this whole time the verses in Deuteronomy 30:19, the words of Moses. He said, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curses. Choose life, that you and your children may live." Let's choose life. Choose life so that we can live the good life. Let's pray.